Okay. Hello plant pals, and welcome to another video. My name is Kenna and I'm so excited to have you here with me today. This is Ridley and he is also very excited to have you here. Today we are going to be repotting some plants that just kind of need an upgrade. So plants that might need to be on a moss pole, plants that might need their moss pole extended. I don't really think anything is super root bound, but I also am going to be potting up some propagations that I'm very excited about. And I am on a time frame here, so I'm on a very limited time. I actually just got home from class and I'm going to be headed out to lunch shortly. So hopefully I have enough time to get all of these plants in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So I am using a different type of moss pole today. This is one that I haven't used before. Looks like this one's called the leaky moss pole. I don't know if you guys can see that. Hopefully you can. The logo is just kind of put in there. And it is another D-shaped pole. I really, really love D-shaped poles. And there's a good reason why. They hold in moisture really, really well. My plants really seem to like these types of poles. They do well in these types of poles, and I don't have any issues with my plants rooting into them. So they have a lot of benefits. Those are the best ones for me. They don't dry out super fast. Just things like that that make my life as a plant parent of 100 or so a little bit easier. So because of that, I did want to try out another pole, but I wanted to keep it in the D-shaped pole family. So this one's a little bit different. It has more of a, what is this, like a hexagon? Yeah, I think it's a hexagon, like a beacomb type pattern or a honeycomb type pattern on the front, rather than just the little squares. And this one does fold really, really well along the crease, which the other ones that I've used didn't. So that's kind of an improvement already. And it does have different sizes that you can choose on the back. So like it has this one, this one, this one, this one. It has 4 different sizes, which is actually quite nice because I am not really potting up any huge plants today. Yeah, neither of the plants that need moss poles, actually none of the 3 plants that need moss poles are gonna be really large. So a smaller size moss pole is actually going to save me some time and hopefully some money with, you know, trying to fill up a giant moss pole full of moss. It does make them, I think, a little bit harder to assemble though, when they have kind of extra, oh, that worked out well. Oh, okay. I'm trying to kind of bend it back and then place the little tab. There we go. The tabs don't seem to want to hold really well though. I'm having kind of some difficulty because I can't get them all in the slot at once. Oh, I kind of can if I do this. So I kind of have to hold it up against my body and then snap each of them in. Okay. And then gonna do these 2. All right. And I am doing the second from the smallest, so I guess the next smallest one. There we go. All right, so that's about the size it is. So this is one open hole. This is the hole that I did. There are 2 larger sizes that you can choose, but I think this one's gonna be pretty good. So they are, let me see if I can get a comparison. Ooh, there we go. This is my Mexicanum, and if you can see here, the Mexicanum pole, I didn't crease it, so it's more of a rounded shape, but like, it is a good bit smaller than the Mexicanum pole, and it actually has the flat front, which is good. I think you can crease these moss poles that I usually use, but I find them quite difficult to do so. I think the only con of this one for me is that the back isn't like super clear, because I do like to see the roots into the moss pole. As you can see actually really well on this Mexicanum, you can see the roots that have grown into the pole, which is again why I really like these moss poles, because the roots do anchor in quite well. So we'll just have to see how these do, but I am quite excited to be trying out a new type of moss pole. And I did purchase these myself from Amazon. I will link them down below. But I think they're gonna work better in smaller pots. So plants that are smaller, have less developed root systems, might need a smaller pole. So that's why I grabbed these. And the plants that I'm gonna be putting on poles today are gonna be a few that I've actually gotten from my previous plant dealer boxes. So this is the first one and probably the one that I'm most excited about. This is my Monstera Adansonii mint. And this is the variegated form of the Monstera Adansonii. And as you can see here, even without a moss pole, those are the first two leaves. This leaf is actually a little bit more mature, has more fenestrations, larger fenestrations, and actually more variegation as well, which I am super excited about. I don't know how well it's picking up on camera, but like there is actually some significant area of variegation on this leaf. So I'm really happy about that. And I think, and actually if you look in, or if you look at like this new leaf that's coming in, it looks like it's pretty variegated as well. So that's also really cool. But I just wanted to get this one onto a moss pole before it gets too much bigger, because it is gonna need kind of some support to grow up. So I did want to go ahead and get this one on there. Also my Philodendron golden violin that I recently got in one of my plant dealer boxes. And this one actually has some really nice developed aerial roots on the back. So, and I'll get a little bit closer so you guys can see those. There we go, right here. Fighting with my camera as always to get the focus. But those aerial roots I think are gonna go really well into this moss pole, and it will allow them to root in really quickly, hopefully, and also start to size up. I'm really not sure what the mature form of the golden violin looks like. I would kind of like to probably look it up. I think that might be a good idea. I just haven't, because I'm not too fussed about it, but I think that would help it to at least develop some really nice big mature leaves and just in general probably be a happier plant. So this one I'm also gonna be putting on a moss pole today. And then the third one I'm gonna have to grab, so hold on one second. Okay, and the last plant that I'm thinking about getting on a moss pole today is this Epipremnum neon variegated. Yeah, Epipremnum Pinnatum neon variegated. And this one I am not super sure what it's going to do as it gets larger. I think it's going to get those like really nice big fenestrated leaves. That's why I do want to get this one onto a pole just to see kind of what happens. That, and it does have a root that is growing out of the bottom there. So I think it would probably like a bigger pot as well. So we are going to see, it does actually finally have a new growth point. It didn't there for a while. So I was kind of hesitating about whether or not I wanted to pot this one up today. But I think I am going to go ahead and pot it up if I have time. So we'll see. But those are the ones that I want to get potted up today. I do have a soil bucket right here that I'm trying to keep out of way this time. Last time I managed to get it in every shot for the entire video, so go me. But I also just want to show you the other one that I want to pot today. This would be my Begonia Sinbad. So if you guys remember a couple weeks ago, we took some cuttings of the Begonia Sinbad and it is doing so well. If you can see all of these roots in here, there is actually a ton of them. And I think it's probably pretty ready for an up pot. So I do want to go ahead and just get this one. I think I'm just going to pot it into this pink pot rather than the cover pot here. Or sorry, rather than the like pot liner or like this little nursery pot. It's going to be a little bit larger for it, not a ton larger, but I think it will be nice. And also I want to add some extra soil in here because this one does dry out really quick. And I am going to actually try to angle this one, and the yellow leaves are from it drying out, by the way, but I just want to try to maybe angle this one up a little bit. I don't know, we're going to see how that goes, but I think that might help kind of it look a little bit better. I actually am thinking about like chopping this entire like limb off here and then just rooting this top bit, because there's not, I don't know, I'm trying to think there's not like a real growth point, I don't think, on that like stem, So I don't think chopping it would hurt it, and it would probably redirect the nutrients really well over to this one on the farther left. So we're gonna see what happens just kind of as I'm going along. But that's kind of the general plan for today. And then my Majestic does need a pole extension pretty badly. It has grown up and over the moss point and the pole. And that is just kind of what I'm referring to is I pack moss up to about maybe here or here in a pole to give kind of a little bit of a chunk of clear space. Number one, for a little cup to sit, that way it gets watered really well. And number two, actually, that way when I'm ready for an extension, it's not blocked off by moss. So that's kind of the idea, is to get a moss pole extension on that one as well. So I do already have some pots picked out for these guys. So let me go ahead and grab them and then we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so the way that I think I had this worked out is that I want to put the golden violin in this one. And then I want to put the Adansonii in this one. I just think they'll look really nice. I am slightly worried, not like a ton worried, but like this pot is a little bit deeper. So I just want to see kind of what the root system looks like on each of these before I, go too wild here. But I just don't think that these pots are really going to be big enough to fit a moss pole very well. I mean, they might be, I don't know. We're going to see kind of what the root system looks like. I would like to get them into pretty pots, but we'll hold off unless I know that it's a good idea. So the golden violin is actually in moss. It's not in, ooh, okay, cool. Okay, so this isn't in a soil mix, it's just in a moss mix. It looks like it does have a lot of bark in it, but the root system looks actually pretty nice. So I'm just kind of trying to tease the moss away from the roots. And again, this one did come from one of my plant dealer boxes. I will try to link my unboxing playlist because there was a couple of different ones in the eye up here. But they have some really, really awesome plants. And I love the way that they ship them, they package them, they root them, all of that stuff. And none of this is sponsored. I actually got a subscription box to their plant delivery boxes as a gift. Sorry, I thought the dog was having trouble getting inside the house. But I got them as a Christmas gift actually. And I think it's a really cool gift if you are wondering what to get a planty person. A plant subscription box of the plant dealer specifically, I think is a really cool gift idea. Because they have a little bit more uncommon plants than you might find in like maybe the Hertz box. I know they have one, or maybe like other boxes. And I just think that it's really cool to be able to get kind of surprise plants every month. Especially like as a planty person who has pretty much exhausted the cool plants that they can get at like the local box stores. It's really nice to have kind of a steady supply of newer plants that like maybe I don't have access to where I'm at unless I do have them delivered to me. And that root actually grew right through the cocoa chips, so that one's gonna stay. And yeah, having things delivered like isn't always the most inexpensive or sustainable option for a lot of people. So I think having it as a gift is really nice. But I'm just trying to kind of tease this moss mix off here. They used it to root this plant in and it obviously worked really well. And actually, I think I'm gonna try to save this mix. Maybe I'll repurpose it for like the pole filler. Maybe, that might not be a terrible idea. But it's just, it rooted obviously as you can see really well, but it just looks like it's moss, some really, really chunky perlite and some cocoa coir. So that's really kind of a cool thing to keep in mind there, because usually when I'm rooting, I do keep plants in like a closed vessel, like a glass vessel. And I usually use just, normal perlite that I get at the garden center. And I do find that gives me really good results. Normally, I like to stay away from moss if I can, because it is sometimes really difficult to disentangle from the roots of a plant after they've rooted into the moss. Like this one is not particularly easy, but it's not the worst, I think, because it is broken up with the perlite and the cocoa coir chips. It could be a lot worse if it was like straight spag moss. But this is coming apart fairly easily. I also did water this plant yesterday in kind of anticipation of this task. Oh, that's another cocoa coir chip that got grown into. Okay. So the cocoa coir chips actually look like the roots have grown through them really well, which is kind of cool. I think this is probably about as much moss as I'm going to be able to get off of these roots. And as you can see, the root system isn't super huge, so I don't know about putting it into this pot. I think that's going to be way, way too big. So let me see. All right, obviously the root system will work really, really well in this pot. Okay, let's see what this pole looks like if I put it into the pot. If you hear snoring, that is Luna behind me. Yes, you. She tends to snore, and I'm not really sure why. She's fully awake. I think it's just allergies. She's fine, but she does make that noise quite a lot. Okay, so if I kind of put an angle, it's not ideal for sure, but like if I fill the bottom with soil, which I typically do anyways, I think I'm gonna be able to get this to fit. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And I am gonna probably repurpose this mix to go into the pole because I think it'll actually be really nice. I've only ever used sphagnum in a pole, so that'll be kind of interesting to see kind of what it does, what happens. And I did actually dampen this soil mix before I got started, because otherwise my soil tends to be like super dry and dusty and hydrophobic. Hi, I'm sorry, am I disturbing you? And I don't like when it's so hydrophobic because it's harder to work with. Actually, let me move some stuff here. It's harder to work with when soil is hydrophobic. Squishy, squish, thank you. Because it doesn't actually want to soak up. It's hard to work with when soil is hydrophobic because it doesn't actually want to soak up any of the moisture that you're putting into the pole or into the soil. So like water will just run right through it, and it's not hydrated. It's not really effectively watered. It just can't soak up moisture. So I do try to kind of mitigate that by pre-dampening my soil if I know it's really, really dry. I'm just kind of putting some of the soil in the bottom here. Okay. And then I'm gonna take this and just ta-da. Okay. So again, not maybe the best fit in the world. I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should have made this pole even smaller. I don't want to make it too small though. Like I want it to be effective for, you know, what it's there for, which is allowing the roots to grow in. It's not actually, yeah, let me see if I can make this a little bit smaller because I don't want to regret this decision. Oh dear. Okay, so I guess we're gonna see how easy these poles are to disassemble and assemble today, which, you know, never a bad thing because eventually with a moss pole you are probably gonna have to take it apart to put or to get like the plant out, or to get if you're making cuttings and like propagations, you are eventually going to have to take that pole apart. So not the worst thing to find out ahead of time, I guess. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to try kind of the same body anchoring method here. Okay. And I guess we can also see like the size difference, if it's going to be substantially smaller or just a little bit smaller. I think it's going to be probably about an inch smaller. I don't know how that's going to translate into the pot though, so we're going to see. Oh, good grief. Moss poles sometimes are such pains, and if they weren't so dang good for my plants, I would probably not even bother. Oh man. I know a lot of people make like homemade moss poles with, oh, what do they call that? The mesh, like the wire mesh, chicken wire, stuff like that. And that is good stuff. And like, it's better to have, you know, support than no support. But I know myself included, a lot of people are going to have difficulty keeping those types of poles moist for long periods, because those types of poles don't have anything to really hold in the moisture besides the substrate, so the spag usually. And that just means that that moisture is going to evaporate out super quickly. And don't mind Ridley, he is just fussy about something outside, I'm sure. Okay, actually that is a little bit better, and it's not terribly smaller. As you can see here, it's still like a good size. Okay, I'm a little bit more confident in this. And I don't think that there's really a top or a bottom to these poles, so I'm just kind of filling as I want to. Anyways, but there's nothing really to hold moisture in to poles that don't have a closed back like this. So the ones that are just open wire mesh all the way around tend to lose moisture really quickly and kind of be a pain to maintain, to my understanding. So I didn't really even want to bother with those, though they can be a more cost-effective option. I personally want to make sure that if I'm going to do something, it's going to be good for my plants and the best I can do for my plants. Bubs, don't eat the soil. Oh my goodness. You are just a little chaotic beast today. But I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is going to be the best that I can do for my plant. And the best thing I can do for my plant is probably to not let it dry out, which I probably would if it were in just like a normal homemade moss pole, like the mesh ones. So my plan was to just go ahead and get these types of moss poles from the beginning, and so far so good. I think it's working pretty well. All right, is there, maybe put a little bit more soil. Okay. And I think that actually might be my boyfriend getting home. I'm not sure. I know that there was a car outside, and his car is quite loud. Typically the dogs both let me know though, so since Luna's not budging, maybe it's not. All right, so I did go ahead and just kind of fill the bottom with soil, and then I kind of poked the roots down into the pot. And I think this is gonna have enough room. It's gonna be able to grow into the moss pole, which is the goal, and it's also going to have enough room to actually like root into this pot. Like I said, I did fill the bottom of the pole with soil, so it will be able to grow into the bottom of the pole as well as into like the free space. So I'm not too concerned about it not having enough room. I was more concerned about fitting the plant in there in the room that it has. So there we go. I'm just kind of poking some extra soil in there, packing it down a little bit, and then poking a little bit more. I don't want it to be over full, but I also want to make sure that both the plant and the pole are kind of well situated in there, or well anchored in there. And the pole does tilt backwards just a little bit, but I think that's unfortunately just going to be a hazard of using, ooh, I am covered in soil. But I think that's just going to be a hazard of using a pole like this in a smaller pot. But let's go ahead and just kind of fill this. And actually, I'm going to sit up for this and maybe even grab a chopstick. Give me 1 second. Let me grab a chopstick, I think. Okay, there we go. See, top of my head's a little bit cut off, but at least you can see what I'm doing. I did go ahead and grab a chopstick. I've seen a few people use chopsticks as they're filling moss holes to kind of tamp down the substrate, or like the pole substrate. And I thought that was a brilliant idea because especially like this one, I can't get my hand in, but most of the time I am just kind of like shoving my hand into the moss pole and trying to pack down whatever substrate is in there. So this obviously is an improvement. And I'm trying to also not get soil and spag and perlite and everything everywhere. And so far, somewhat good. But there we go. So what was in that pot actually filled like a pretty good amount of this pole. Granted, like it is on the smaller size, but it still filled about half of that hole outside of the soil. So that's really cool. So the moss poles did actually come with a couple of rolls of plant Velcro, and if you watched my houseplant parent tools, or I think it was something like that video, I talked about why I love plant Velcro. Plant Velcro is amazing. It really helps to kind of anchor the plant onto poles especially, or just kind of any support in general. And for this one, I am gonna go ahead and maneuver it, or I did go ahead and maneuver it, so that the little aerial root is kind of into the moss pole and it's kind of stuck to the moss pole with the Velcro. So I think that's gonna help a lot. I'm actually gonna tighten it up just a little bit because it is a little wobbly. There we go. There we go. Okay, so that is the golden violin. She is on a little moss pole, and I'm actually super excited about that. I think this is gonna actually help her a lot in her growth. And I am really excited to see kind of what this plant turns into as she grows. But I'm probably gonna go ahead and water her through because like I said, am on a tight time frame here, and then keep going. Okay, so while that plant is watering, let's keep going with the Monstera Adansonii. So I am gonna go ahead, almost knocked over one of my plants down here, and assemble the next moss pole. Actually, let me go ahead. I want to take a peek at the roots before I assemble the moss pole, actually. I think that's gonna tell me whether or not this plant is gonna be staying in this pot, since I know that this pot can accommodate the smallest size. Okay, yeah, this plant is staying in this pot. Dang, okay. This pot is a good size for these plants. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted them into pretty pots, so that's more of a me problem than a plant problem, but okay. So there is a little bit of spag in this soil, which I'm just gonna remove. It's not my preference. Actually, it looks like it's a soil topper. It's not my preference to have spag mixed into my soil because I don't want to create pockets of moisture where I'm going to have problems just kind of keeping root rot away. So I do try to keep spag out of my soil. It looks like maybe this one was a rooted cutting. It was placed on top of the soil in a mix of spag, which actually is not a bad idea. I am kind of experimenting with some more rooting methods lately. So this is kind of interesting. I'm kind of curious to see maybe if I could replicate that in the future with some of my cutting and propagation projects. That was a little bit easier to remove. As you can see here, root system, again, not super large. It's not terribly small either, but I think it is going to be very appropriate for this pot. At least for a little while yet. So this next pole is also going to be on the smallest size, which actually is going to be a little bit difficult because that means I'm going to have to find a small pot for the Epipremnum if I do get to repot it today. So that's a little tricky. Wasn't anticipating that, but that's fine. I just want to make sure that every plant that I'm potting up today is going to be happy. Good grief, Luna, you snore so loud. I do talk to my dogs like that constantly, by the way. I don't think I'm the only person. In fact, I know I'm not the only person who does. I know everybody talks to their pets, but I sass them too. And my boyfriend, Chris, always makes fun of me for it. Because, you know, they obviously can't sass me back, but I feel like they do sometimes. Especially the corgi. He is a very sassy boy. He makes all the grumbly sounds. All right. There we go. That's half done. Okay. I keep on forgetting I can stick my fingers through this side to kind of make it a little bit easier. There we go. Okay, and just snap it in place. Perfect. Okay, so that is the next moss pole assembled. Awesome. And I am Gonna try to maybe incorporate some of the spag into the pole again. I do like to try to reuse ingredients and just like potting mixes when I can. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but plants parenthood is actually like a really, really wasteful hobby. Like, I feel like it's obviously like, you know, there's green plants and like that's good for your house and good for the world and all of that, but like we use a lot of water, we use a lot of plastic, we use a lot of like raw materials like spag, tree fern fiber, and other things that are not really renewable resources. And we, you know, we have a lot of plastic pots, we have a lot of plastic moss poles. It's really just not the most earth-friendly hobby. I mean, it's not the worst by any means, but I try to kind of limit my waste when I can. So I do reuse soil a lot if it's not like super old, and I do try to reuse like ingredients. So like moss and things like that I'll try to reuse. And if the soil is a little bit older but I don't necessarily think it's done, I will sometimes even put it like outside in some of my outdoor plants, because my outdoor plants I feel a little bit less worried about. If that makes sense. Like, I keep most of my prized plants indoors. There are some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, like my really like special ones are inside. So I'm just kind of fluffing up this mix a little bit. That way the cocoa coir isn't sitting all at the bottom. And packing it in there. And that's what I mean by sassy. He does that all day, every day. Okay. I'm just kind of, again, readjusting these roots, pushing them down into the pot a little bit. Okay, and I'm trying to also kind of adjust this plant. That way the aerials will be able to root in, but the stem, okay, that's actually good. That's good. The stem was a little bit in the way, so fixed that problem. Just had to kind of change the orientation of it a little bit. But yeah, so plant parenthood is a little bit of a wasteful hobby. I try to reduce that waste as much as I can, and this soil, like I said, is perfectly fine. Actually, the soil's really great. I don't know if you've ever gotten a plant parent box, or not a plant parent box, a plant dealer box. There we go, a plant dealer box, but they have awesome soil, and I've mentioned it, I think, every time I've opened one of their plants, because it is so nice. So I am reusing that because that is going to be great for my plants. And then I'm just going to pop some of that spag down in there. And actually, let me go ahead and get my cup of spag, because I do have one of those. I'll be right back. All right, so I grabbed my cup of spag. I cannot for the life of me tell you what this was. I don't remember what I was using this for, but I do remember that when I stopped using it for that, I put it into this cup because it was still fine and I knew I was probably going to need it at some point. So there we go. I'm just going to pop it down into this pull here. And because this spag is dry, it's going to take a little bit more kind of finagling, I think, to get in there, which is where the chopstick comes into play. Cool. And dry spag is kind of a freaking nightmare to work with. It's harder to rehydrate. It's just in general kind of a difficult medium to work with. It's just because it goes everywhere. Like I said, it doesn't rehydrate well. It's kind of gets stuck in like block form, so it gets really stiff and doesn't want to be maneuvered where you want it to go. I think this is working out pretty well though. I'm definitely loving this chopstick thing. Okay, so again, this isn't one that I need to fill up super high because this moss pole obviously doesn't have a huge plant growing on it. So this plant grows, you know, this far up the moss pole so far. There we go, this far up the moss pole so far. So it doesn't need like a hugely filled moss pole. I just want to fill it enough that way it can kind of get started. on its journey here. So I think that's probably good. And I am, again, gonna anchor it with a little bit of Velcro tape. I do also really love using like butterfly hair clips, which I think is actually a hack I got from Wild Fern on my plants, because that actually can like hold onto the stem and anchor them into, there we go, anchor them into the pole really well. And they are easily movable. Not that, you know, Velcro isn't movable, it obviously is, but I feel like it's a little bit more of something you have to kind of finagle with than you do a clip. So I usually do like to anchor the bases of my plants though with Velcro. There we go. Perfect. All right, so this plant now is in a little pot with a little moss pole, and as you can see here, looks really nice, really cute and happy. And I think it's gonna really like this. I am gonna go ahead and again water this one before I move on. I am gonna be out of town again this weekend, or out of the house again this weekend. Got spag in my hair. Not for like vacation purposes or anything, but because of that, I want to make sure that all of my plants are good before I go, because I don't want to come back to really thirsty plants. So I'm gonna go ahead and water this one, and then we'll keep going. Okay, so I was gonna do the Epipremnum Pinnatum next, but I think I have a plan. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is do this begonia first, then use this plastic nursery pot for the Epipremnum Pinnatum. That is the plan. I'm hoping that will turn out well. So I am gonna go ahead and do what I said in the beginning, I think, and just go ahead and chop that and chop that. And for anyone who doesn't know, begonias are ridiculously good growers. For the most part, I'm sure there are some exceptions. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but as long as you're watering them and they're, you know, in enough light, they will grow. So I'm actually gonna reroot these, and that way I'm gonna have another full begonia plant, and just go ahead and pop the ones that I have already rooted into the pot. And I think that will work well. So this one I also watered yesterday. I'm gonna move this to the side. This one I also watered yesterday. It was getting really thirsty, and normally I like to water plants in after they're potted, but this one I just kind of didn't have the choice. So I'm gonna go ahead and just break apart this soil a little bit. Begonias typically have pretty fine root systems, so I don't wanna break it apart too much. I just wanna make sure that the roots look good. Yeah, this root system is just fine. Right, so I'm gonna pop it over into this cash pot that is now going to be its pot. And I just really like the pink. I think it, like, if you look, the pink of the cash pot or the pink of the pot matches the pink on the begonia leaf. Yeah, there we go, really well. Like, I think the pinks just look really nice and play off of each other well. So that's kind of what my thought process was there, is at least they will look nice together. So I'm gonna go ahead and just fill the bottom with a little bit of soil. Typically begonias do like a little bit of a denser soil mix, because this one, because this one obviously came in denser soil mix, my soil mix is not going to be exactly the same, but I think it'll be close enough that there's not really going to be a problem. And this one actually I'm gonna put back in the little cup over here and let that one keep rooting. But these two both have a good enough root system that I think they will be just fine being popped into this pot here. And like, there's also a little baby begonia kind of growing from the bottom, so I'm not super worried at all about these taking in and, you know, filling out this begonia. So I'm just kind of using my chopstick to make a little hole right there, because I do kind of want, there we go. All right, and then this one I think I'm gonna have to put over here. That way she has enough space. And there's again a little baby begonia kind of growing from the bottom of this one. So I wanna make sure I have kind of the room for that. I think that'll be good. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and backfill. And my soil mix is less dense than the one the begonias are currently in, which is what I was kind of getting at before I got distracted, which is fine. I mean, it's not ideal. I do try to keep my soil mixes kind of consistent. Actually, hold on. Maybe I should put it over here. There we go. I try to keep my plants in kind of like a consistent soil mix, if that makes sense. So I don't want to put a plant that's not used to super airy soil into super airy soil, or a plant that's not used to dense soil into dense soil. But with begonias, because they have fine root systems and because they need a lot of moisture, as long as I just keep this one watered, I think it will be just fine. I'm just gonna have to kind of keep an eye on the center of the plant, specifically where that denser soil mix is. And I'm just, again, backfilling in here to make sure that everything is firmly packed in, all the roots are covered. Awesome. This front bit over here needs a little bit more. And anyone who's ever had houseplants can tell you, like, houseplants can die at the drop of a hat, yes, but also most plants will find a way. So even if I cover like a leaf or something, I know that, you know, this plant will figure itself out and will kind of figure out what it's doing, will keep growing, it will be fine. So I'm not too worried. I'm trying not to kind of cover the little baby bottom leaves, but if I do, it's not really the end of the world. Okay. There we go. All right, so that is my Begonia Sinbad done, and it does have a little plug in the bottom of the cash row, or like the, I guess now pot that it's in, so I can remove that plug and have drainage when I'm watering, which is nice. Again, not something I'm overly concerned about, but it's definitely a good thing to have when you are using these types of pots as pots rather than just cash bows. I'm trying to kind of get the damp soil off there, but I think that's actually super cute. I really like the way that turned out, and this plant is blooming in several places. I hope you can see all of those blooms, and the blooms are really cute and pink, just kind of like the pot. So I think the pot kind of makes a good match for it. Okay, I'm gonna pop that over to the side. And then I don't know how much more I'm gonna have time for. I'm gonna at least get the Pinnatum done, because I don't want to leave that one sitting while I'm gone. It's also in a spag mix, and again, spag tends to dry out pretty quick, so I don't really want it to just kind of stay like that. And even though this one has like a really, really small growth point and it's not quite yet ready for like it actually to start growing into the pole, I still do want to give it a pole in preparation for that day. Because I don't want to go through the trouble of repotting this plant only to have to repot it again in a couple months or so. So just working on that now. Oh, it's actually 2 cuttings. Okay, I did not realize that. I actually thought that it was just like one little cutting of 2 leaves, but it's 2 different cuttings. So that's kind of cool. Both of them have a nice little root system on them. And they're Epipremnums, which is the same family that pothos, or like the typical common pothos, is from. So they are pretty aggressive growers. They like to kind of take off no matter where you put them. So I'm not really all that worried about these. I feel like they're gonna grow really well for me. But I'm happy to see that they do have like a good substantial root system on both. They have like really nice, thick, chunky main roots, which is really cool to see. And this is actually, oh, they both have growth points. Good. So these are actually like the little growth points that I was talking about. And if you are familiar with houseplants, then you know what those growth points look like. But like those little green spear-shaped little points coming from the nodes. Sorry, I'm shaking, so it's also having a hard time focusing. But those are the growth points. So that's going to be the new growth that's coming in. That's where it's going to come from. So I know that these both have growth points now, which is good. I know that they're gonna be just fine. And actually, because there's gonna be, or there's two of them, there's actually gonna be two vines, which is kind of cool. Because again, I wasn't really expecting that. So that's a nice surprise. But let me go ahead and assemble another moss pole for them, and apparently get kicked behind by Luna as she stretches. Oh man, this dog lives in the lap of luxury. Yes, you do. She'd actually be in my lap right now if I were letting her. I try not to let her in my lap as I'm repotting because she makes my life a little bit more difficult when she does that. But normally she is a lap dog 110% of the time. All right. Perfect. And again, I'm just going to use actually the smallest setting on these as well. This is partially because obviously the plants are really small, but also partially because I don't think it's going to need like a huge pole, especially considering they're not even growing up a pole yet, or like they're not even growing in that kind of way yet. So I think it'll be actually really good to have the smallest setting for these. There we go. There we go. Okay. I think I'm getting better at this the more of these that I assemble today. Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. All right. So because this is a round pot, I think, yeah, they'll definitely be a little bit easier to actually fit the pole in there. So that's kind of cool. Usually square pots, you know, would not be my preference, but that is what they came in for the other two, and honestly they work just fine. It's just, it's harder to find like a cash bow for square pots, so I'm gonna probably have to deal with the like black plastic pots for a little while, but that's not a huge deal for me, so it'll be okay. There we go. So got a little bit of soil in the bottom. I'm gonna put a little bit of soil in the bottom of the cup itself. Perfect. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pop these on here. So I'm gonna try to figure out, okay. You do you, bud. I'm trying to kind of figure out like which way this plant will be growing when it grows up against the moss pole. That way I do have it kind of prepped to be anchored on there. Hi. Yeah, there's plants there. Thanks. All right, so I was hoping to actually get a little bit more done, but I, again, didn't have a whole lot of time. I was halfway between school and I actually am going out to lunch in a couple minutes. So I'm not gonna get to put the Majestic on a moss pole or get my Regale out and check the roots, but we definitely can do that part 2. So let me know if you guys would like to see a part 2 of this video, or just like another like repotting. I definitely need to do them, and doing them in front of a camera gives me a little bit of motivation and accountability. So yeah, go ahead and leave me a comment down below if you like this kind of video. Give me a thumbs up. I would love to have those from you guys. They actually help out my channel a lot. And if you hit that subscribe button, you will see me around more often, which again, I would love to have you guys around more often as well. But I think that's gonna be it for today. So thanks so much. Bye.